All ladies and gents, this is 2003 Iraq War Part 2 animated history by the channel Armchair Historian, or the Second Persian Gulf War is the other name for this war. In the first part we saw that Bush organization invaded Iraq and the reasons they gave felt like much of an excuse than real reasons. Now, did they have bad intel or were they just excuses? People can speculate. But there was massive protests everywhere. UN was debating whether they should go to the war or not. There was massive debate, but Bush organization didn't care. They were already in Iraq, thinking how to invade, and CIA was already there, gathering all the intel and reconnaissance. They invaded Iraq spontaneously. Their intel was bad and the strategy was sloppy because they attacked lots of places. The intel was so bad that they attacked a place where Saddam wasn't even been there for 10 years, and they attacked that place. Lots of missiles were launched. Lots of missiles missed their target and hit the civilian area, and it probably caused a lot of civilian casualties. So it was a blunder operation all around. They thought the Iraqi people would accept them with open arms, but the spontaneous nature of the attack and lots of civilian casualties, obviously that would not be the case. Iraqi people didn't accept them with open arms, and it was just all around a bad attack with a sloppy approach and bad intel, especially knowing the countries are United States, UK, Austria, and whatever others, the coalition of the countries. These are some big countries. They should have better intel than that, especially when they're attacking places like Iraq, because clearly they are way more powerful than Iraq can ever be. They should have better intel, and they should have conducted the operations properly than they did. So it was bad all around. So let's watch the second part now.
Before we continue our look at the war, I'd like to take a moment to thank Squarespace, our sponsor for this video. Squarespace is your go-to resource for web design, giving you everything you need to start an online business or community hub, or even share your intelligence about WMDs. Squarespace features a comprehensive suite of developer tools that lets you customize your domain in any way you desire. Essential additions such as support for podcasts, integrated analytics, and social media sharing buttons are also standard with every package, enabling you to reach a target audience no matter how loudly they might be protesting at your international military activities. Go to squarespace.com/armchairhistorian for 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. Using the link in the description really helps out our channel.
Jab at the Bush.
The first major engagement began on March 23rd, when a maintenance convoy of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Division took a wrong turn into Nasiriyah, right into the headquarters of the Iraqi 3rd Corps. Caught in a hastily prepared ambush, 15 of the 18 vehicles were destroyed by heavy weapons fire, and 18 U.S. soldiers were killed or captured. But
I was just saying how the intel were bad and there were lots of blunder, and the video starts like this. I mean, come on, man. That is just too bad for the countries that we are talking about right now. This shouldn't happen. This is too bad of an intel. It's not that just casualties on Iraqi side. Even the American soldiers are dying for no reason because of the bad intel. They take wrong turns. I mean, come on, really?
Strategic bridges over Nasiriyah's modestly named Saddam Canal were secured later that day after men from the 2nd Marine Division stormed the city, suffering heavy casualties from the determined Iraqi defenders. As if the intense urban combat wasn't enough, 6 Marines were also killed in a friendly fire incident when an A-10 Warthog mistakenly attacked their amphibious vehicle. Finally, on the evening of March 24th...
Come on, man. Warthog attacked their own vehicle. What countries are we talking about? I mean, seriously. If India did this kind of blunder, I would still be amazed. And that's India. We are talking about United States, UK, Austria. I mean, come on. This is just too bad of a... No, obviously, people are still taking jabs at Bush for this very bad attack, because this is just bad all around.
The Marines broke through and established a perimeter north of the city, which held up despite multiple counterattacks by Iraqi forces and the Fedayeen Saddam militia, who were fanatical not only about Saddam, but apparently also about Darth Vader. Further north was the town of Najaf, which was situated close to highways leading to the important cities of Karbala and Baghdad. Due to its strategic location, coalition forces decided not to bypass Najaf, and instead chose to isolate the town out of fears it could become a staging area for attacks against American supply lines. To accomplish this, the coalition needed to capture the bridges to the north and south of the town. Elements of the 1st Brigade combat team attacked the northern bridge, codenamed Jenkins, in the early hours of March 25th, but made slow progress until they linked up with reinforcements before dawn. The Americans eventually fought their way across the bridge, despite desperate attempts by Iraqi engineers to destroy it. Around the same time, US forces advanced on the southern bridge codenamed Objective Floyd. Resistance by both regular military and militia forces was intense at both sites. On one occasion, an Iraqi drove a city bus at full speed into an M3 Bradley CFV.
That was a big threat right there, that. A bus against a tank. I mean, that's not ordinary bus, that's an anti-tank bus. What the hell was he thinking? That he's gonna drove a bus into a tank? I mean, what's that going to achieve?
On March 26th, Najaf was successfully encircled, and the attackers were relieved by the 101st Airborne. Over the next several days, the Americans swept through the town with tanks and infantry. The 101st deliberately left a single road out of the city open in the hope of using it as a kill zone for escaping troops. On April 1st, some weary Iraqi soldiers took the bait and were ambushed by snipers and helicopter gunships, and the city ultimately fell on April 4th. To the south, British forces had an unexpectedly difficult time taking Basra and its nearby port. Starting on March 27th, they whittled down the Iraqi garrison defending the valuable port over the course of 2 weeks. When they finally gained control of the vital waterway, only 11 Britons had died, while the Iraqis had lost some 40 to 50 times that number. When British armor finally rolled into the city, they were welcomed by jubilant locals, as predicted by US Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Unfortunately, however, the crowds quickly turned into mobs of looters.
There you go. There you go. I was thinking like, what the hell? There were actually Iraqi people who welcomed with open arms? No, they were just looters.
The final major engagement before coalition forces arrived in Baghdad was at the Battle of Karbala Gap, a roughly 25-mile or 40-kilometer-long strip of land flanked by the Euphrates and Rizaza rivers. Iraqi commanders were well aware of the gap's strategic importance and had placed 2 divisions of the elite Republican Guard to block the Americans' advance. However, Saddam Hussein's son, Qusay, severely weakened the defense by redirecting some of them to the north, which proved to be a fatal mistake. On April 1st, American troops broke through the gap, reaching the Euphrates at the city of Musayyib. Though several Iraqi armored divisions counterattacked on the night of April 3rd, they were driven back by aircraft and rocket fire, and the coalition held on to the important bridgehead. With the path to Baghdad...
That's the gist of it, this war. I mean, there's no hope for these Iraqi people to just fight against this coalition because they are way too powerful. The Iraqi soldiers can get an edge here and there, win a small battle here and there, and then what's going to happen? A fighter plane is going to come and just bomb you, and in the end coalition is going to win anyway. This is a hopeless war if there's ever been one.
Forced open and victory on the horizon, a last bloody struggle for the capital began. While the Iraqi army had almost completely disintegrated at this point, the Ba'athist Party militias holding the city did not hesitate to utilize underhanded tactics to slow the coalition advance. After extended skirmishes with the defenders, Colonel David Perkins launched a surprise thunder run of nearly 30 tanks straight into the city on April 5th. Once behind enemy lines, the column came under intense fire from militiamen disguised as civilians, but Perkins was able to identify their defensive positions and execute a fighting withdrawal. US Marines then stormed the Diyala Bridge on the eastern side of the city and advanced along the northern bank of the Euphrates. Aware that this flank was almost entirely undefended, the nervous troops fired on any car refusing to halt out of fear of suicide bombers. Amidst this carnage, Perkins...
See, there you go. Even some civilians that were just frightened and didn't stop, they were killed because they thought they were suicide bombers. I mean, this war brought on so many civilian casualties. I mean, it must have. There are probably an unaccounted number here and there. It must have a massive amount of casualties right there. Obviously, the Iraqi people didn't like that this invasion happened because of that. Obviously, that brought on lots of instability. Lots of terrorist organizations grew just because of that hate. That Americans and British and all of them can just invade our country for no reason at all. Because, you know, especially their reasoning that Bush organization gave were, you know, proved to be wrong. So Iraqi people, like, you know, they can make up any bad excuses and invade our country over and over again. So this caused not just Iraq but in the Middle East and lots of country to people to rose up because of the distrust towards United States and British and like that. So this caused lots of instability. Lots of terrorist organizations grew after this war. It was just all around bad. ISIS and everything we are seeing right now. This war's effect is we are gonna feel for a long time.
Led another thunder run into the heart of the capital on the 7th and rewarded himself by spending the night in one of Saddam's opulent palaces. After a final desperate defense by the militias, the city was finally captured on April 9th. There were some initial celebrations by Iraqi civilians, including widespread vandalism of statues and portraits depicting the now defeated Saddam. However, as in Basra, massive waves of looting soon followed and continued until US forces cracked down on offenders. But Saddam himself proved elusive and would not be captured for many months. Coalition soldiers would spend their time securing the occupation and searching for other high-value government officials that had escaped the invasion. But as the coalition searched for these officials, violence between Iraq's minority groups soon erupted and insurgents began to assemble. Nonetheless, on May 1st, 2003, off the coast of San Diego, President Bush made a dramatic appearance. Landing on the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, the former Air National Guard aviator wore a flight suit for his televised address in front of a national audience. Standing in front of an enormous banner reading "Mission Accomplished," he announced the end of major combat operations in Iraq. At the time, the proclamation seemed reasonable. The Iraqi military was in shambles, and Saddam Hussein had been reduced from an autocrat to a fugitive. But despite all appearances, the troubles were just beginning. For the next 8 years, the coalition was engaged in a protracted counterinsurgency and suffered heavy casualties, while many thousands of civilians lost their lives. In 2003, the mission may have been accomplished, and the brief conventional phase of fighting was indeed finished, but much like in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq had only just begun. Thanks again to our sponsor, Square.
Guerrilla warfare is like, you know, really hard to kill. You have to show yourself as a, you know, not much of a threat psychologically to the area in order to suppress the guerrilla warfare. Otherwise, people will always rise up if they think you are a massive threat. Certain people can always portray you as a biggest threat to, you know, get a lot of soldiers in your side and cause lots of terrorist organizations to rise up. So just basically invading and just defeating certain people, all that's gonna create is martyrs. People are just gonna see United States and a coalition as enemies, which kind of happened in the Middle East. Lots of organizations rose up because of this, lots of terrorist organizations and things like that. And what's stupid about this is, you know, Bush organization took over and won Iraq, sure, but afterwards, obviously, when you invade a country and win, you have to take care of the country afterwards. They weren't prepared for that either. It's like nobody told Bush or something like, yeah, we're gonna invade Iraq, we're gonna win, but then what? I mean, look at the Russia. Russia, annexed Crimea, and after taking care of Crimea, they kind of went into a massive financial issue. So this is invading Iraq and then taking care of it. I mean, that's gonna cause a massive financial issues, obviously. And they weren't prepared for that either. This whole war was so unprepared and sloppy. It's just stupid, man. They could have, they could have still invaded this country if they gathered more intel. They were more strategic rather than spontaneous. If proper people were consulted on this, it would have been much better. But they just went in. People are still debating in the UN and everywhere, and they were already there trying to invade it. Alright, if you like my reaction, please don't forget to like and subscribe.